Thank you for joining with me for this week's midweek video as we continue on the 10 essentials to our progressive sanctification as we become more like Christ in our walk with Him on this earth, right? So now what we are at is we're at number 8, and number 8 is increasing in humility. Now I know we've talked about humility already here and there, but it's an important piece to bring into our progressive walk of sanctification because it is an area that is going to want to keep creeping up. And sadly, as bad as this sounds, but as we grow in our biblical knowledge, like we've already talked about, as we grow even in our sanctification process, the thing that breeds into us more is pride. And so even more so, we have to humble ourselves because sadly, there is this thing that can well up inside of us of almost we're better than other Christians because I don't do that anymore. Why are they doing that? Boy, they are so selfish. The only thing they look at is all their needs and what they can get out of it, right? They come to church and it's all about them and what they get out of church. And church isn't about that. Church is about serving God. And there's all these things we can do where we all of a sudden become kind of a little bit prideful. In these situations. And maybe it's in the point where we're alongside somebody in the discipleship process and we're kind of helping, and I want to use this term loosely because I think it can lead to pride, but we're the discipler per se. And when we look at it in that light, it can kind of become prideful. Like you might be spiritually at a further along than them, but that should never be a place to be of pride, right? We want to be humble, and we're no different than them. We are saved by grace, right? We need the mercies of God, the grace of God, and though I might in certain areas feel like I'm further along in this progressive sanctification than them, there's other areas that they're going to be further along than I am in this progressive sanctification. So we have to be very careful of those things. So we need to make sure that we are increasing in humility as we go through this walk with them. So let's take a look at a couple of key passages that kind of brings up this idea of increasing in humility. And it comes from 1 Corinthians, and all three of them will be here. So the first one we'll look at is 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 31. And it gives some details in verse 30, but in verse 31 it says that as it is written, he who glories, let him glory in Yahweh. If we're going to glory or if we're going to boast in something, it really needs to be our boasting is in God and what He has done, not boasting in the things that we have done. Right? So there's a place for boasting, there's a place for glory, but that glory goes to the Lord, not to our own actions. To kind of further build on this idea, let's look at 1 Corinthians 4:7. It says, For who makes you differ from another? And what do you have that you did not receive? Now, if you did indeed receive it, why do you boast as if you have not received it? Right? We kind of talked about this in this last video. We brought nothing to this world. So everything we have, we've received. And so why would we boast about something that we have done, right? Because it's not ours. We've received it. So we should boast in the one who gave it to us, not in the fact that we have done it. And now I've heard the disclaimer before of, no, everything that I have, I've gotten with my own 2 hands, right? I have worked hard for it in my life. But the question has to arise into our minds, who gave you those 2 hands? Right? Well, the Lord did. Who gave you the mind to rationally think through, to come up with a plan, to come up with a strategy, to do the things that you did, to gain the things you have? Well, God gave you that mind. Right? If you lost those things, you wouldn't be able to have did the things that you did, or you wouldn't be able to continue to do them anymore. And so, recognizing that anything that you have is because God has allowed you to have it, so you can't boast, right? The common Old Testament passage is the axe can't boast in what it's done, right? The axe cannot split the wood on its own. It cannot chop down the tree on its own. The only way the axe is useful is the fact that the muscle of the human being that's wielding the axe has done anything. You and I are the axe, right? We're instruments used by God. But without God, we would do nothing. So just like the axe can't boast in how it chopped down the tree, so you and I cannot boast in anything that we have done, because everything we've given or have been able to do, we've received, every gift that we have. And so that should add to our humility, right? Bring ourselves down. It doesn't mean that we have no value. What it means is we're not better than anybody else. God could have did through somebody else what I just did, right? And a great way to look at this is saying, like, a lot of it has to do with our backgrounds, right? So what if person B, right? I'm person A. Person B had the same upbringing and the same background that I had and the same opportunities. What if they would have did better than what I did? What if they'd be further along in the sanctification process than me, right? Because we have different backgrounds. Or what if I had their background, their upbringing, all those things? Maybe I would be in a worse state than what they are in, right? So we never know, because we're all in humanity so much different. And so to humble ourselves and understand we have what we have that's given to us by God. Last one I want to look at is 1 Corinthians 5, verse 6. Your glorying is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? Right? When you put yeast into a batch of dough, the yeast spreads through the entirety of the dough. It just takes a little bit of yeast to spread it. And God uses that illustration to liken it to boasting and pride. It just takes a little bit, and it'll spread into our lives. So Christian, be really strong. Work really hard, especially as you grow in your sanctification process, becoming more like Christ. Really make sure that you're doing a great job of increasing your humility. More can be said on this, but for now, let's leave it at that.